If the Saints are going to beat the Falcons on Sunday and also make a run in the NFC, which, all right, looks a little bit doubtful at the moment, but is still technically on the table, they're going to have to do without Michael Thomas. Let's explain why on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. It's your host, Chris Vogel, and as always, we're brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, or hurt offshore, Scott Vicknair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. Now, keeping it on the subject of injuries, the Saints got unfortunate news this Tuesday, which isn't totally a shocker, but now it just becomes almost a finality to it, and that is Michael Thomas being placed on injured reserve, which means he's going to miss at least the next 4 games. Who knows? Could this be the end of his Saints tenure? I'll talk about that in just a minute, but what we do know is it is the knee injury that he suffered against the Vikings. Dennis Allen talked about him being, out for a little bit, described it as something of a significant injury, and Saints have not yet said if Mike's going to be out for the year, so we don't know yet. But it does feel like this is starting to turn in the direction where, all right, this was a beautiful marriage at the start of things between Michael Thomas and the Saints is going to end on, I don't want to say fitting, but unfortunate terms, in the sense that the last couple of years have just been plagued by injuries for Mike. You go back to the 2020 season when he hurts the ankle. That obviously wasn't ideal. Then he misses time with the toe injury. Now you got this season where he's going to miss time with the knee injury, which really stinks because for me, Mike was healthy. You saw it out there. You saw the leadership on display week in, week out, and he was still productive, right? It's not like he was Michael Thomas of old, but the Saints didn't need that from him. They needed their quarterback and their offense to play complementary football, and that just hasn't happened. It hasn't been because Michael Thomas isn't Michael Thomas of old. Michael Thomas is still producing and was producing at a decent level, and it's going to stink not having him, make no doubt about it. I think you're going to lose him on those short plays, and unfortunately, the Saints never really utilized him to his full potential this season. I think there's far more slants they could have used. I think there's far more, third and short, got to have it down situations where you can have him on a quick hitter, and they didn't use him. But you're still going to miss that effect. You're going to miss having that guy who commands a lot of attention. You think back to the Bears game, faced a bunch of double coverage, faced bracket coverage. There is still a ton of respect around the league for a guy like Michael Thomas, but it does feel like this is kind of the end of that tenure that he had in New Orleans. And it really just comes down to injuries. That's all that matters, because when healthy, he is a really productive player. Pre-2020 injuries, he was, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the NFL for the 2017 to 2019 stretch with the way he played. And this stinks. My heart breaks for Mike. I hope that he's able to come back later this season. No one has said anything yet, and his return would give this team a boost. From here on forward, though, it's the Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed show if their quarterback can get them the ball. Obviously, that's going to be a big discussion, and I'll talk about that in depth in about 12 hours or so when we have a live show here on Boo Crew Media. We'll talk about the Falcons game. We'll talk about what the Saints need to do if they're going to get back on the right track and actually make something out of these last 7 games. But for now, the focus is on Michael Thomas. I wish him all the best in his recovery. I hope he does play again later this year. But I don't know. We have not heard anything yet, and there's nothing that leads me to believe that he will. And if I'm Mike, it's all circumstantial, right? What if you come back, re-aggravate that injury, and you're going to be a free agent? Do you want to hurt your value any more than it's already been hurt by the fact that injuries have just really decimated this guy in terms of his career production? Because we're talking about a guy that would have been a surefire Hall of Famer to now, hopefully he can get healthy again and be regarded as one of the best playmakers in the league like he was back in 2019. But there's a long way to go to get to that. Either way, let me know what you guys think about this situation in the comment section below. Do you think this is a devastating hit to the Saints offense? Does it kind of feel like, man, whether Mike's in there or not, they're going to be struggling? How do you feel about this? Either way, without Mike, maybe you do take a couple more shots down the field. Maybe get A.T. Perry involved. We saw a little bit of action from him in the Vikings game. He had his first career touchdown. We'll see what happens this Sunday. But like I said, stay tuned for more coverage here at Boo Crew Media. So subscribe on YouTube and stay tuned here for another episode of the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.